Hi, I'm Kristin. Welcome to my channel, From Chronic Fatigue to Chronic Abundance. And welcome to my live weekly Q&A. Every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern, I hop online to answer your questions about what it's like living with life with severe chronic fatigue and what to do about it. Why am I on here talking about it? Not because I have all the answers, nor am I ever going to pretend to, like so many gurus out there. Instead, over a period of over 6 years, I went into massive, severe chronic fatigue on 3 separate occasions. And I say 3 separate occasions because each and every single time I healed, I got my life back, and then I relapsed. And as one single human being, each time I healed, I needed completely different things, different people, different blood work, different supplements, different treatments. So for all of you out there looking for that magic bullet to heal, it doesn't exist. For me as one person, it doesn't exist. How does it possibly exist for everyone out there? And I'll tell you what, there was no one single magic bullet for me each time I healed either. Each time I needed a whole series of things, okay? And I hope this doesn't leave you feeling too dejected or overwhelmed because I'll be frank, it is a lot of work. However, every single ounce of effort I put into healing was worth it. Because you know what? It's been 4 years since I recovered from my last relapse, and life is good. I work full time again. I can work out again. I can plan my future. I have a social life as much as we can during the pandemic. But my point is, the healing mindset is what got me through each and every single time I got ill. It's what guided my actions. It was what helped me find what I needed to heal each and every time. And that's what I share on this channel. I share the healing with mindset with you so that you can develop the resiliency, the hope, the motivation, the energy to keep going, to discover what it is that your body needs to heal. All right. The way this works, hi, if anyone's here, I'd love, he said, hi. Oh, hi, Heather. Thank you so much. Blessings to you as well. Like Heather just said, you can pop, a little like hello in the chat, and then also just drop your questions here. And I'll just go through them in order. No question is too big or too small or too personal or too weird or too medical or too specific or too anything. Like really anything goes. We can talk about just about anything on here. You're not going to offend me. If I really don't want to talk about something, I won't, but that hasn't happened yet. And also, if you're still living with severe chronic fatigue as a symptom, whatever the cause, whether you don't have a diagnosis, whether you've been diagnosed with ME/CFS or fibromyalgia or lupus or anything like that, even Lyme's disease, feel free to weigh in and offer really encouraging support to one another. My favorite part about doing this is when there gets to be conversation happening in the chat box between the people who are here listening, because this isn't about me having the answers. It's about me providing a framework while also acknowledging that each of us have something positive to support, to contribute to one another, to help support each other. All right. These work best when people drop questions in the box. I'm not great at just sitting here talking for an hour. I prefer to respond to questions that you have because then I know I'm talking about things that are important to you, that you want to hear about. Hi, Anna. I'm so glad that you're here, as always. Anna hit a really big milestone in her healing journey recently. I'm not going to tell you what it is. I'll leave that to her to share if she wants to. But I'm really, really happy for her to find some answers. That's Brian in the background. Brian, you want to wave? Looks like he's getting some water. So let's see. Heather, I don't think I've seen you on our chat before. Welcome if this is your first time. And if it's not, I apologize. Let's see. So, with COVID-19 happening, there's a lot of the world that is for the first time experiencing the emotional drain, the emotional challenge of having to be at home all of the time, of never getting to leave the house when they want to, of having massive limitations on their ability to walk freely. And of course, those limitations come from a different place and have a different reason behind them and aren't exactly the same. People are starting to understand what it's like living with those limitations, which people with severe chronic fatigue obviously have been living with that for months or years, or some of us, unfortunately, even decades. So I really, really hope, okay, Anna, I'll get to that. I really, really hope that this helps generate some more sympathy for those of us living with severe chronic fatigue, from our friends, our family, our caretakers, our spouses, maybe people we've even had to separate from a little bit because they didn't understand or believe us. I'm really hoping to see more empathy develop around us as a result of that. Anna had a kind of a breakthrough a few months ago when she first finally found a doctor near her who can actually help people with severe chronic fatigue, that they've specialized in this, they've helped other people through this, and there's someone who's outside of the conventional medical establishment who looks at the body in a more holistic way, who does a lot more blood work, for example. And after finally finding this person, even though she'd been looking for a very long time, she finally found someone just 15 minutes away. As a result of hearing me talk about my own journey and my own journey with iodine deficiency as one of the many, many things my body needed to heal, she asked her doctor, well, actually, that's not entirely true. She went online and got her iodine tested. And not surprisingly, her iodine came back extremely low. So I consider that a huge milestone in her healing journey. It's probably not the only thing she needs to get better, but because she's so severely deficient in it, by supplementing with that iodine, it should really help her start feeling better. And it should also help the other treatments she's already doing work better, because when you're deficient in iodine, every single cell in your body is affected. And that's because of the way our body produces thyroid hormone. So the thyroid hormone is defined by the number of iodine molecules attached to it. You may have heard of thyroid hormones T3 and T4. T3 has 3 iodine molecules, T4 has 4 iodine molecules on it. And every single cell in our body has a receptor for thyroid hormone, because thyroid hormone is what tells our body to produce more energy, to raise body temperature, to lower body temperature, to raise our metabolism, to lower our metabolism. So without proper iodine, we can't have proper thyroid hormone, and we can't have proper functioning of every cell in our body. So it's a really important thing. If you've never gotten your iodine tested, I recommend everyone should just get it tested if you're struggling with severe chronic fatigue. Because while I don't think everyone is going to be iodine deficient, I'm not saying that. I don't believe that. I don't think there's any one thing that everyone needs to do, in terms of supplements. But I do think we all should be testing as many things as we possibly can, just so we know, because having data about our bodies is extremely powerful, because it's something concrete. It's something we can, with the right guidance, of course, we can use to help shape our journeys and decide what we should be taking and what we shouldn't be taking. Because the last thing I want for any of you guys is to also be wasting time and money on supplements and treatments that you don't need, that aren't going to be effective for you. I don't want you wasting money and time, on iodine supplementation if you don't have a deficiency, for example. You got to get it tested to find out. So, yay, Anna, for discovering something else that her body needs, a big milestone on your healing journey. We'll see where it goes from here. The next thing for her, it sounds like it may be testing out dosages, because it's one thing to know that you're deficient in something, and it's one thing to know you need to supplement. The next step is figuring out how much you need and how consistently and over what time scale. That's a whole other journey in and of itself. All right, I'm going to grab some kombucha. Let's see. One thing I haven't talked about in a while with the healing mindset is something that's very, very basic, but always needs revisiting, because it's also one of the hardest things to do for ourselves. And that is pacing. Pacing is a common topic in the world of ME/CFS and severe chronic fatigue, because it's all about living your life within your energy envelope, meaning, we all wake up with a very limited, I used to wake up with a very limited amount of energy, and that was all the energy you had for the day. And once you use that up, Doesn't matter what else you had planned, you're not going to be able to do anything. And pacing is this idea of never pushing yourself into a crash. It's about living to avoid a crash. Now, the caveat, most people don't have a problem with this, but Anna, being as good about the healing mindset as she is, had a problem with this. And that is, you don't want to underwork yourself. You don't want to rest too much. You do, just like any healthy person, you do want to work within the upper limits of your capabilities regularly. But most people have a hard time not pushing themselves into a crash because of mindset. There are a lot of things that we want to do, things we feel like we need to do, things we feel like we should be doing. And sometimes we lose sight of our health and our own priorities and needs in favor of everything that we should be doing instead. And we push ourselves into a crash. And the problem with the crashes is that it takes quite a bit of time and quite a bit of extra rest and recovery to get our bodies back to where they were pre-crash. I often liken our energy levels to a bank account balance. So if a healthy person were to wake up with $10,000 in the bank every day, equating to like 10,000 units of energy, which is way more energy than they would need in a day. Someone who has severe chronic fatigue might be waking up with $1,000 in the bank, or maybe $100 in the bank, depending on how severe it is for them. So while for a healthy person, they can blow through a few $1,000s in a day and not even notice it and know that they're going to wake up replenished back to $10,000 the next day, somebody with ME/CFS who only has, say, $1,000, they're going to have to really budget to not go over, right? Or especially someone who's only operating on like $100 is going to have to be very, very careful with how they spend their energy budget throughout the day. And when you crash, it's like not only have you used up all your energy, but you've gone negative. Like if you're crashing, and automatically think of that as your energy bank going negative. And guess what? Your energy is not going to automatically bop back up to $1,000 tomorrow morning. Your energy is going to bop back up to $1,000 minus however hard you crashed. And it usually takes several days. Well, I don't know. I don't want to say how long it takes to recover. For me, it usually took several days. Some people, depending on the crash, it can take weeks or months to get back to where you were, years even. So crashing takes you negative. It means you have to recover that money, even just to get back to zero, right? So we want to be avoiding that as much as possible, because then whenever we do make improvements and gains in our health, we're not just getting out of debt. We're not just getting back to zero. Those improvements are actually banking more money every day. Instead of waking up with 1,000, now you're waking up with 1,100 every morning when you've made some sort of improvement in your health, right? So we want to be realizing those gains and feeling healthier, not working to just get out of debt, to get out of energy debt, just to get back to zero. That's not much of a life, trying to get out of debt. We want to be living better, and that requires pacing. So are there any questions around what pacing is? I assume most people have heard this topic and read about it and understand it. I wanted to bring it up to talk a little bit more about like the mindset aspect of it. But if you guys have questions about pacing, let me know what you've got. So the reason pacing is so hard is because our brains are constantly telling us we should be doing all these other things that require more energy than we have. And so often we give in because we actually want to give in. We want to be doing these things. We want to be working. We want to be cleaning. We want to be cooking for ourselves. We want to be independent and self-sustaining. However, when we do that, we're actually being a little delusional. We're being disconnected from reality. And we're basing our actions based on fantasies. Because the reality of the situation is, and we all know this, is that we really don't have the energy for that thing. And we can wish and hope and pray that it's going to be okay if we just push a little harder today. But deep in our heart of hearts, we know we really shouldn't be, and we know it's only hurting us when we do that. So whenever there's a big disconnect between our actions and our reality, there's something going on with our mindset there. Because the only way to heal and the only way to get through this is to recover our energy. And if pushing helped trust me, we'd all be better by now because we've all pushed ourselves way too hard in the early stages of this illness. And guess what? It didn't help. It didn't make us better. In fact, it made us worse. And if you just keep pushing, just hoping for a different result, that's the definition of insanity, right? Repeating the same thing and expecting a different result is insanity. So if you've been pushing, and you crash, and you get worse, or, maybe you just don't get any better, stop expecting pushing to lead to any sort of health improvements, because it's not going to for you if it hasn't by now. All right. Let's see. What else can I talk about today? I don't know. I'm trying to think of other past questions that brought up some really good conversation before. I don't know. This is just kind of a silly little thing about me. A week ago, I don't know how well you can see it, I almost cut the skin off over my knuckle. I was making lunch last Thursday. I guess it was actually right before I did this last Thursday. And you can't really see it, but there's like this big flap of skin that almost got removed from my body, and it's healing up nicely now. But this is probably going to be a scar I get to talk to people about. I don't think this is healing very smoothly. Kids, don't try to open plastic packages with knives when scissors are available. That's how I did this. I was using a knife to do something I should have used scissors for. Let's see. Other really good topics. I think one of my favorite topics, since there's no questions, is talking about guilt. Like, I really struggled with guilt when I was ill, because in addition to my mind screaming at me that I should always be doing other things, and the fact that I wanted to be doing all these other things, like working and bringing in a nice paycheck, I would also feel guilty for not doing all of these things. Like, even though I was in like a very abusive relationship at the time, when my mindset still wasn't right, this is the first time I was ill before I'd begun to heal, I used to feel really guilty about not being a better girlfriend. Like kombucha bubbles. I used to feel really guilty about not being the girlfriend I used to be. I used to feel guilty about not being the girlfriend I was when we first started dating, when I could still walk freely and have a life. And that guilt would really eat at me. And not only did it weigh me down with this heavy, just really awful feeling, it also shaped some really ugly interactions between me and my boyfriend, because I felt so guilty. There were times where I almost felt like I needed to show him how guilty I was, almost like I wanted him to know how guilty I felt. And it was this belief that by being guilty, he would still love me more, because he could see how much it hurt me that I wasn't the person I used to be. So he would kind of know that I wasn't doing it on purpose and I wasn't getting anything out of it. And kind of this is Darius, by the way. He's a sweet boy sometimes. The rest of the time, he's a doofus. Almost like, I grew up Catholic, and Catholics are known for their guilt. And it was almost like by displaying my guilt and by displaying how bad I felt, then, this idea that like it would have forgiven me in some way and I wouldn't be held accountable, which was just a really messed up way for me to think back then. When I really didn't have the right mindset in place, because it wasn't my fault that I got sick. I didn't choose to be sick. I wasn't keeping myself ill. I wasn't doing this against him. I didn't need to prove how terrible I felt. None of those things were necessary, even though I believe that they were. And when I would try to express my guilt to him, it just got really ugly. It was a really ugly exchange. Partly because, like most of us do, he had his own baggage, and his response to my guilt was very ugly. Sometimes calling me things like a sick little girl, and nobody else would want a sick little girl like me. And I was 25, 26 at the time. I was a grown woman. And he was my age. And it took me a long time to really understand guilt. That guilt isn't about that heavy feeling. It isn't about showing people how guilty we feel. We can't have other people resolve our feelings of guilt for us. What I really learned is that guilt is actually something we feel to prove to ourselves how much we care, to prove to ourselves that we're good people, how much we care about ourselves, and also how much we care about others. So really, guilt isn't a call to display our guilt to other people. Guilt is actually a call to let others know how much we care about them, because we don't feel guilty about things if we don't care about the people that they impact. So at that time, or let's say now when I feel guilt about something, which I very rarely feel guilt anymore, actually, it's been a great side effect of the healing mindset. When I do feel guilt, it's a call to instead acknowledge to myself how much I care about these other people, and then to find a new way of expressing to these people how I care about them, or to find a way to let them know that I'm thinking about them, they're in my thoughts, I care about them, I wish things were different. So it's about expressing a lighter emotion of care and concern, as opposed to expressing that heaviness of guilt. We don't want to stay or live in guilt. Excuse me. We want to be able to feel it naturally, just allow it to arise, but then properly interpret that meaning and find a path forward that relieves us of that heaviness, leaves us in a lighter place, and then ultimately is going to help us deepen our connections and relationships with one another, because we're expressing how we truly feel about each other. All right. Hi, Roth. About previous week, yes, Borrelia infection is real, but most people who tell you they got chronic Lyme don't. Chronic Borrelia infection is very rare in the Western world. You can Google it. I'm not sure about this whole Borrelia. I'm not sure what your point is, Roth. I feel like I missed a message in here. I feel like there's something in here that I'm not seeing. Let's see. Anna, funny thing, according to her iodine, her T3 and T4 numbers were okay, but maybe iodine is needed for other things too. Yes, Anna, if you read Dr. Brownstein's book, iodine is actually used for a lot of other things as well. So I do have thyroid issues in addition to iodine deficiency, but I also have very low stomach acid. And there was some thought initially that my stomach acid might improve when I started supplementing iodine, because it turns out iodine is important for the production of stomach acid. And there's a lot of speculation. There isn't a whole lot of science done around it, but there's speculation that iodine plays a much bigger role in more parts of the body than we're currently aware. Let's see, Raf, but just like Epstein-Barr virus can result in lasting complaint, Borrelia can too be a trigger for CFS, but untreatable Borrelia isn't real. Those are CFS patients misled by charlatans. Oh, I see. You're just commenting from last week. Oh, I gotcha. Yeah, from last week's convo. So you're saying that most people who say they have chronic Lyme don't actually have chronic Lyme, because Borrelia infection is rare. It's definitely becoming more rare, though. I mean, tick spread Lyme's disease is increasing in number of cases every year. But Raf, I completely hear you on many more people believing and being told that what they have is Lyme's disease, even without tests. which is, a little crazy town. Because the symptoms of Lyme's disease are shared by many other illnesses. It's very hard to know that something is Lyme's disease without testing for the bacteria in the body. Chronic Lyme is rare because it's treatable. No, Borrelia isn't so rare. All right, I'm getting confused up here then, because maybe just restate what your point is, Ralph. That would help, because I'm getting lost. Chronic Lyme is rare because it's treatable. I don't know. I don't know enough about it. Like, I haven't studied Lyme's disease that much. There are people who have Lyme's disease or had Lyme's disease that I follow. And some of them definitely advocate for the fact that chronic Lyme's disease is real. But I don't know. I don't know. One interesting thing that happened that is working for a lot of people who have been like confirmed with like tick-borne Lyme's disease is actually bee venom therapy. So they just keep a little tiny, like very small hive of bees, and once a day or something, they go sting themselves. And something about the bee venom interacting with their immune system actually helps people get over Lyme's disease, what they call chronic Lyme's disease, and like get their lives back. It's pretty incredible stuff. And there's actually science to back up the bee venom therapy too. It's not just like a quack ad hoc thing. It's something that's been studied and confirmed, which is pretty cool. If you think you have Lyme's disease, I would definitely look into bee venom therapy, and of course, find someone knowledgeable to educate you on the topic if that's something you're interested in trying. Lyme is fairly common, but chronic Lyme is mostly CFS patients. Google it. So it doesn't sound like something that's been like tested thoroughly. If there are, look, I will Google it right now. Chronic Lyme versus ME/CFS. Let's see what comes up. Let's see, there's lots of overlap. Post-Lyme's disease and chronic fatigue syndrome. Chronic Lyme disease. Okay, here we go. October 9th, 2019 on newscientist.com. Chronic Lyme disease may be a misdiagnosis of chronic fatigue syndrome. So it looks like there's some data to back up the idea that that may be the case, but I'm not seeing a strong positive. I don't know this Dr. Dryden. I'd have to like spend some time researching this Matt Dryden of Hampshire Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust, because he's the one saying that most chronic Lyme sufferers actually have CFS. But then he says that his data is based on the fact that there's a big group of chronic Lyme patients in Australia where Lyme's disease bacteria has never been detected. So yes, if you're in Australia where there's literally never been like the Lyme's disease bacteria present, then yeah, you don't have chronic Lyme's disease because you've never had Lyme's disease. Like, I don't know. But to then take that and assume that in places where there is like actual Lyme's disease, to assume that none of those people have chronic Lyme's disease, logic doesn't work that way. That would be a logical fallacy to assume that. So yeah, so like this article also talks about people who have self-diagnosed themselves with chronic Lyme's disease. You can't self-diagnose yourself as having that. You need to have first had like confirmed chronic Lyme's disease. So like, I think there is, and maybe, as usually happens, Ralph, we usually end up at the same place, having the same beliefs and seeing things from the same point of view. I think if people are trying to self-diagnose anything, it tends to be very problematic when the symptoms that they have overlap with other illnesses and they're trying to say it's one definitively. I think that gets very problematic for anybody. And there are a large number of people doing this. There are also a large number of, health practitioners who go ahead and make diagnoses the same way, just using symptoms without doing tests. And we're not going to get into why that happens right now, but it does happen in large numbers. So I think it's interesting that someone's looking at this. I personally think it's hard to say. I think it's personally hard to say if someone has chronic Lyme disease or ME/CFS. However, if they had a confirmed case of Lyme's disease before, then I think maybe it's likely. But I don't know. I'm struggling with this one. All right, we got some text. You don't need Venom. Antibiotics treat 100% of the real Lyme patients. That doesn't turn out to be true. There's a lot of people who have had multiple Lyme disease tests and come out confirmed positive who are not fully treated by the antibiotics. If you have access to the internet, you have access to antibiotics. It's true. But see, the thing is, some people do need Venom. A lot of these people that I've been following have resources. They have money, they have families to support them, and they have taken the route of going to see the doctors and getting the antibiotics. And they have not been treated by that. They did not get their lives back from that. And many of these people have gone on to spend tens of thousands or even $100,000 or more continuing to treat Lyme disease and what they refer to as chronic Lyme disease without ever getting better. And a lot of those people, just that subset of people I'm talking about, have gone on to try Venom therapy and are getting their lives back from it. So there is something going on with the body and the immune system in people who have had confirmed Lyme's disease where they don't get their lives back until they try Venom therapy. Do I know why? No. Do I say that's everybody? No, I'm not saying it's everybody. But there's definitely a large enough number of those people for me to think that there's something there. Almost all chronic Lyme patients have CFS. I think that's a big statement. I mean, how do we know? How do we know, Ralph, that all chronic Lyme disease is ME/CFS? How do we know that? Because I haven't read that yet. It's not a logical fallacy. They are unvalidated diagnostic methods. That's why their government isn't paying back stuff, etc. I'm not sure what that's saying. Well, the logical fallacy was to say that, even though people in Australia are diagnosing themselves as chronic Lyme disease, even though there's never been a confirmed case of real Lyme disease in Australia, then obviously those people probably don't have chronic Lyme disease. But then to apply that to other populations where Lyme disease does happen, where the bacteria does exist, that's a logical fallacy, pure and simple. Just because population A is one way and population B is another way, you can't, just because there are some things that are similar, if there are some things that are different, you can't just equate the two. I wish I could pull off the top of my head what logical fallacy that is. They all have names, but I don't know them well enough. Can I come up with an example? No, I'm not going to come up with an example. Let's see. I mean, yeah, if anyone in Australia is being diagnosed as having chronic Lyme disease, that definitely would raise a red flag for me about how are they doing that? Why are they doing it? And where on earth is that coming from if there's never been any Lyme disease ticks down there? That seems crazy. I agree with you on that one. Let's see. Anna, at the end, it might not play a role. What infection caused CFS? Once the body has all the supplements and the right mindset, the immune system might be able to fight it anyways. Could be. Okay, what Anna said is drawing a connection for me. And maybe this is what Rolf meant first, but I'll let him tell me. Which is that the infection that led to Lyme's disease could be stressing the body and the immune system. Excuse me, that kombucha, I shouldn't be drinking it while I'm on the video. The infection that causes actual Lyme's disease is causing, what am I saying? I'm just babbling now. So the bacteria, if you're infected with the bacteria that creates Lyme's disease, it can be such a burden on the body and the immune system that not only do you develop Lyme's disease, but very similar to someone with a viral onset of ME/CFS who has like the flu, for example, where the virus or bacteria infects the body, gives them flu symptoms, but has been so hard on the body and the immune system that they then get pushed into ME/CFS. So people who have Lyme's disease are getting pushed into, their bodies are getting pushed into ME/CFS in addition to having Lyme's disease. Is that your argument, Rolf? And that's all it is? And at that point, there is zero distinction between chronic Lyme's disease and ME/CFS? You can let me know if that's what you've been trying to say or something else. Yeah, I think that's interesting to think about, because I mean, Lyme's disease is clearly very hard on the body. I mean, even for people who do recover with their first round or two of antibiotics, it's debilitating. It's extremely fatiguing to people who have it. So it's clearly something that's very, very difficult on the body to overcome. See, now I want to like go down this like Google hole of Lyme's disease. Like I said, like I've made myself aware of some of this stuff. I'm definitely not an expert on Lyme's disease. Let's see. Okay, so chronic Lyme's disease is also referred to as persistent Lyme's disease. Let's see. Reading. Yeah. I mean, the symptoms are extremely similar between chronic Lyme's disease and ME/CFS, no doubt. Although there does seem to be a bigger emphasis on aching and swelling and pain in joints and muscles that like some people with ME/CFS have, but I don't know how many. I don't know what proportion. All right, I don't know. I'm not going to be able to find what I was thinking of this quickly. So that's one of the challenges of doing a live stream debate like this, because it has turned into a debate. Raf has gone quiet. I don't want to push you to respond. I know it can be a lot of energy to like research this stuff and put messages together. So like, you know, I don't want to try to like overburden you on this one. Yeah, that is an interesting thought, you know, and I'm sure we're not the first people to have that thought about Lyme's disease infections leading to ME/CFS in some people. I mean, the two have been side by side for a very long time. I mean, so many of us with ME/CFS symptoms have been tested for Lyme's disease. And even vice versa, there have been misdiagnoses, like those misdiagnoses both ways. So if there is a connection there, I'd be really surprised if no one had come upon that yet. But then again, there's a lot of information out there that seems common sense and seems to be true, but isn't commonly known, right? And maybe this falls under that bucket as well. I don't know. However, all this stuff, while interesting, is also just tangential, because even if chronic Lyme's disease is ME/CFS, how does that help anybody? Knowing that, how does that help anybody? And even if these people who had Lyme's disease continue to have symptoms, even if they don't need bee venom therapy, the fact is bee venom therapy is giving them their lives back and doing it quickly. Whereas, like many of us, they've spent boatloads of money on doctors who have gotten them nowhere. So like my point of view is like, maybe they don't need bee venom therapy, but you know what, if it's helping you, I'm going to be in support of it. If there aren't like negative downsides of it. And the great thing about bee venom therapy is not only is it working for these people, it's very cheap. It costs as much as buying bees, which I don't even know what that is, but it's not very much. Bees aren't expensive. So as far as like treatments go, it's definitely on the very low end, affordable scale of things. So like, I think it only has upsides for people who are looking for answers and for looking for ways to feel better. I also, this is my own belief. I'm not saying you should believe this or try this or anything like that. I also personally believe that if, you know, people are into some of this homeopathic stuff, and I don't know if that stuff actually works or not. If you're not familiar with homeopathics, it's the idea that you can take the essence of something and you can dilute the essence and dilute it until you have like 1/100,000th of that thing, excuse me, per like bottle of water or whatever. Like you can like put something in water, let it sit in water, let it distill its essence in there, and then just dilute it down until there's like almost nothing or actually nothing of the original essence in there, but the energy of that thing is still in the water. And by consuming the water that has its energy in there, even if you're not actually getting any of it, the energy of it will still heal you. So that's clearly very, very far out there. I will admit I've done some homeopathics over the years because I've definitely had times where I was like, may as well try it. If someone has been struggling with their health for a long time and they've looked at all the conventional places, they've done all the right work, and they still aren't getting better, and they take homeopathics and they start to feel better and they're getting their lives back, I'm going to be 100% in support of them continuing to take homeopathies, even though I don't agree with it, because it's working for them. Oh my gosh, I just had the word on the tip of my tongue. What is that called? Why can't I think of it? Oh my gosh, when your belief that something is good for you makes it work better. Oh my gosh, why can't I think of that? Oh my gosh, why can't I think of this word? I think I had it going, placebo effect. Placebo effect. Oh my gosh. If the placebo effect is, yes, thanks guys. If that's working for you, freaking go for it. Like, try to get your homeopathies at a decent price. Try not to be price gouged by them. Try not to pay $100 for the essence of whatever. But whatever works for you, freaking go for it. I think it's beautiful. I think it's great because you know what? In every single drug trial, they have to account for the placebo effect. It happens pretty much every single legitimate drug that's trialed on the market. When people take sugar pills and believe they're taking something specific, some people just get better anyway. Even without that molecule, even without whatever in there, sometimes the power of the mind prevails. And I think that's cool. Let's see. Raf says, because some CFSers get sick because of antibiotics, so the lie can harm people. His best argument against chronic Lyme, they heal because of the same things as CFS patients. It's impossible to kill Borrelia without antibiotics, yet chronic Lyme patients heal without antibiotics. Okay. Yeah, I'd say that's true. Like definitely people who have chronic Lyme's disease have typically tried antibiotics already if they were originally diagnosed with Lyme's disease. I don't know. I haven't read too much about people who are healing from chronic Lyme's disease who have really had much success at all other than Venom therapy, to be honest, which does impact the immune system. So, yeah, you know what, Ralph, I think this would for me, I would want to break this conversation out into people who have diagnosed themselves with chronic Lyme's disease or people who have been diagnosed by health practitioners as having chronic Lyme's disease when they were never confirmed as having Lyme's disease originally. And then I'd want to break that. The other portion of the population I'd want to talk about are people who did have Lyme's disease, who then went on to develop what they call chronic Lyme's disease. And is there any difference between those two populations of people? Because I really think it's almost like apples and oranges between those two groups. Because as we've all witnessed, when you have a poorly understood health issue and you have this collection of symptoms, people get misdiagnosed and mistreated all of the time. It's really, really hard to find out what's really going on and to find out what you really need. So, I know there are definitely people out there using the term chronic Lyme's disease just because it's trendy and popular and telling people they have that because they kind of find it easier to believe that than believe other things. So yeah, I don't know. I'd want to see how those two populations compare against each other. Placebo effect in chronic Lyme's disease patients is the same as in CFS. That's cool. Yeah, I thought placebo effect was typically 5 to 10% of most drug tests have to, or the placebo effect is responsible for 5 to 10% of most drug tests and stuff. Anna says she tried to try homeopathy, but she's just too rational for that. She couldn't make herself believe. Hey, yeah, there's nothing wrong with you if homeopathies don't work for you. Trust me. You can't, that's the thing about the placebo effect. You can't make it work. It either does or it doesn't, it's and even there are plenty of times where people believe something is going to work and then it still doesn't, it's not yeah, we can't force it and it doesn't happen in all cases, but when it does happen, it's pretty freaking cool. I think. All right, we're almost coming up on an hour here. What other questions do y'all have? What's going on in life? What's challenging? Is it family? Is it friends? Is it exercise? Is it pushing yourself? Is it resting? What's up? Anna said her mind was it's just sugar. The rest of you, shut up. You will destroy the fact. Yeah. Like I said, I think that stuff's worth trying. There's no downside except the cost, obviously. You gotta weigh the financial cost of homeopathies before trying them. But yeah, whatever. If they work for you, cool. I'm not gonna give you a hard time about it. If you get better and you stay better. Let's see. Hi, Darius. You want to say hi? You want to say hi? Come here. You want to say hi? Come on, bud. Come on, say hi. He's so dark. He's a Doberman. He looks black as night on the video, doesn't he? Come here, bud. Come on. Come on. Come here. Nah, he just wants to sleep. He's just being a sleepy buddy. He's got his little bunny here. He's sleeping on his bunny. Hi, Endless Blue Skies. Welcome. I'm Kristin, if you weren't here earlier. Let's see. Oh, thank you. His name's Darius. What about recovery when you have not been eating enough calories in a while? Will it take longer? So, okay, I have to ask before I can answer this, why have you not been eating enough calories? Um, are you trying to lose weight? Is it because you don't have the energy to eat? You don't have an appetite to eat? Like, what's behind not eating enough calories? Because that would change my answer. You know, oftentimes if we're listening to our body and we don't want to eat as much, then that's usually a good thing. Although there are other times when we just don't have appetites, and we should be forcing ourselves to eat anyway. Let's see. James Esslings talks about it. Importance, calories, CFS, not eating disorder. You had liver pain. Ooh, that's a tricky reason to not eat, because the doctors found nothing. Shocking, right? What else have they found nothing about? So, okay. So if you're not eating because you have liver pains, I would definitely say that's, man, I really need to think about how I say this. Like, clearly you need to treat whatever pains are happening. How do you know it's liver actually? How do you know it's not gallbladder or some other organ inside? What tells you that it's liver? Regardless though, I mean, if eating causes you pain, you definitely need to figure out why. Is it because there's something in your diet that's causing pain? You know, do you really have celiac disease? Is there something wrong with your gallbladder and you need to eat less fat? Is there something else going on in the body that you need to address through diet? Oh, you're back on eating like crazy. Okay, so you're back to eating normally. I would say as long as you're currently eating normally and you're getting plenty of micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, all that good stuff, as long as you're getting plenty of the micronutrients along with enough calories, now I would say that I wouldn't worry about what happened when you were calorie deficient because you're past that part. I wouldn't even give it a thought. I would just continue to try to eat enough and eat enough micronutrients. If you're still having pains in your organs, your liver or anywhere else in there, that clearly needs to be addressed. You probably want to work with someone knowledgeable around this. I know you went to a doctor who found nothing, but there are plenty of health practitioners who work outside the conventional medicine system who look at things differently, who look at the body differently, do different blood work, have different expectations of what's actually healthy levels of things that they test, who could be very beneficial in this area. You think too much saturated fat. Okay. Yeah, as long as you're eating well now, endless blue skies, just feel good about that and just focus about moving forward. Because when we try to look back too much, like really, what's it going to do for you at this point? Not much. Not much. Don't waste your energy looking back. Keep your energy focused on what you can do today to help yourself get better. That's the best thing you can do. Welcome. Oh, Rafa's eating too few calories this week because of lockdown. He had an energy dip those days. Yeah, the body will downregulate if we don't have enough calories. And when you don't have enough energy anyway, having even less energy is, of course, going to be really, really hard. Yeah, I wonder why you think saturated fat is hurting your liver. Saturated fat isn't hard on the liver. It's not hard for the liver to digest saturated fats. It's actually much harder for the liver to digest fructose. Like if you're eating too much fruit or if you're eating like agave nectar or high fructose corn syrup, that's actually going to be a lot harder on the liver than eating saturated fat is. So I'm curious, like, what it is about saturated fat that you think was connected to that pain. If it had to do with fat in general, if you have a gallbladder problem, having too much fat in your diet of any type, whether it's saturated fats or mono unsaturated fats or polyunsaturated fats, the gallbladder is going to hurt in response to all of the enzymes or whatever it needs to produce to help break that down. It always happens during a time of eating more saturated fats. Interesting. Okay. Saturated fats can cause fatty liver without obesity. I think a lot of that's been disproven. It's been a while since I've looked into like saturated fats impact on the diet. I'm one of those people who personally eats a very high saturated fat diet, and I have honestly my entire life, ever since I was a kid and as an adult. And I do very well on a high saturated fat diet. My cholesterol is amazing. I don't have liver problems. All right, I don't know. This is going to take more than like a 30-second Google search to like really understand this. Let's see. Sophie versus Pufa. Oh, yeah, I don't know. The first couple bits of research I found were on people who are already obese. So, I don't know. It's going to take more research. I spend too much time on blogs. It's mainstream science. There's a lot of things, Ralph, that have been considered mainstream science over the years that have actually been disproven as false the whole time. So there are certain aspects of mainstream science that are really, really great. But when it comes to nutrition, there's a lot of terrible information that has been verified by science. I have a very hard time really taking much seriously when it's been studied by nutritionists. That's been my experience with health and nutrition. Because there's usually, gosh, do I want to go down this rabbit hole? I don't know. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I'll just say that when it comes to nutrition, you can find a scientific study that says almost anything is bad for you. Like you can find scientific studies that say red meat is bad and veganism is great. You can find studies that say the opposite. You can find studies that say veganism doesn't have an impact on health and that red meat is good for your health. You can find studies saying eggs are bad, saying eggs are great. You can find studies saying sugar doesn't affect overall health. You can find studies that say people shouldn't have any sugar in their diets. You can find, it's just, there's a lot of problems with nutrition science. Ralph, we should debate these things one-on-one. We shouldn't subject everyone else to these things. Yeah, we'll agree to disagree for now. Yeah, you're welcome. Endless blue skies. Hope you come back. All right, we're almost at an hour. Is there any other questions I can get to today? I'm happy to spend a little bit of extra time. Ralph, you wonder if it would help or hurt you, and it would all depend on how you approach it. It would all depend on not pushing yourself to do too much too often, pacing yourself on a YouTube channel with how often you post, with how long you post. Are you going to do like live streams like this? Are you going to record and edit? Editing takes a lot of time and energy, to be honest, unless you can pay someone else to do it. It depends what you want to talk about. If you want to talk about these topics that require a lot of research and you need to lay out an argument, and that's a much more time and energy intensive way to run a YouTube channel versus just getting on and talking about things. So as long as you just go easy on yourself and balance a YouTube channel with your energy requirements, I think it could be a really great project for you to work on because you're passionate about it. And it's something that you can do in small little chunks. You can spend 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there as you have the energy. It's not like an all or nothing kind of thing. I think it could be a really great slow project for you if you do it with pacing. I'd be supportive of that. Yeah, Anis agrees that nutrition is complicated and that there are studies that can prove or disprove anything. I also want to add that I don't think that there is one diet that's right for everybody. Because while I do very well on a very high saturated fat diet, I mean, I eat loads of butter. I eat butter like literally every day of my life, and not in small quantities. I know that not everyone's going to do that well on a high saturated fat diet. I just know that, and that's okay. Like, I know people who actually do very well on vegetarian diets. I am not one of those people. I tried it years and years ago. I don't do well on vegetarian diets. I have no interest. Um, I think it's about understanding the limitations of nutrition science. I'm not saying we throw it all out the window. I think it's healthy to understand its limitations. I think it's healthy to question what governments are promoting in terms of nutrition science, because in many, 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 many cases over the past 50, 60 years, there has been a large industrial machine that has been propped up by the use of nutrition science to sell certain types of food, period. It's just a fact of life. And we want to understand fact from fiction. We don't want to fall prey to nutritional studies used as backing for marketing, in other words. And I think we all need to experiment with what works best for us. Some people are going to do better on a higher meat diet, and that's cool. I think in that case, the more meat you're eating, the more important it is to source your meat locally from organic farmers, beyond organic farmers who treat their animals humanely and all that good stuff. Some people are going to do really great on high grain diets. Some will do best with only cooked vegetables as opposed to like fresh and cooked in their diet. Some people do well eating a lot of nuts and seeds. I'm not one of those people. I don't like eating a lot of nuts or seeds. I don't feel great when I do. But, you know, we've just got to be willing to explore different things. We need to understand that the one thing everybody agrees on in nutrition is that eating more vegetables is more better. The more vegetables you can get in your diet, a variety of cooked and fresh, the healthier you're going to be overall and the better you're going to feel overall. And try not to take anything as dogma. Let your body guide you. Get things like your cholesterol checked and like look for nutrient deficiencies. And yeah, just look for your own optimal diet. I think is the best thing any of us can do. All right. I missed some chats. Raf says, not the energy. He's got pacing down, but reading about CFS science is something you like to do, but you don't know whether the topic is healthy for you to read about a lot. That's a lot of healthy self-awareness right there, and a lot of healthy questioning. Anna says she tries not to focus on it too much. There are some things that everybody agrees on. Everyday McDonald's is not great. Yeah. You just try to follow these rules that are correct. Raf agrees with no one diet. His ideal diet has changed during his lifetime. With CFS, he can't handle too much grains and starch. Okay, Endless Blue Skies asks, do I still eat complex carbs and simple sugars? Yes, I do. I need carbs. I had been on a low carb paleo diet for a long time, and it actually took me years to realize that eating low carb was actually creating cravings. I was craving food all of the time, not because I was hungry, but because my body needed carbs. And once I started adding carbs into my diet, the cravings started to disappear. Once I added the carbs earlier in the day and I added them in larger quantities, holy cow, it was a game changer for me. And it's not every woman, but a lot of women tend to be that way. And there's some speculation that something about our hormones constantly being in flux like they are. I mean, not just when we're on our period, but throughout our entire cycle, AKA throughout our entire fertile lives, women's hormones are constantly in flux. And something about carbs helps even that out, it seems, for many women. I do still eat sugars. I really try to stick to the 25 grams a day. Sometimes I go over, sometimes I'll hit like 30, 35 grams of sugar a day, maybe more. I don't really worry about it too much. Yeah, I don't worry about it too much. I'm not going to be the person eating like 100 grams of sugar a day. I'm not drinking soda, like none of that kind of stuff. But if I want a little something sweet, I just eat it. Ralph, nuts are hard for his digestion as well. Anna agrees that people are different. She never was good with fats. She likes fish and nuts, but the rest just did never feel good for her. And she got her omegas tested and they're fine. Yay. Happy for you to know that. Yes. Hi, Reimagined. It's hard during times like this with limited access to food. It is harder with limited access to food. I do feel that too. Ralph says, yes, the fact Russia isn't exporting grains anymore is worrying, even though grains are hard for his digestion. I wouldn't want food shortages during my recovery. And I think we're far ways away from food shortages personally, but who knows? I've been wrong about things before. Yeah, I mean, food shortages are always a hard thing to live through. And unfortunately, at this point, there isn't a ton we can do about it. One thing that leaves me sleeping a little bit easier at night is knowing that I'm sourcing most of my food from local farms. So like we're getting as much of our like meats and cheeses and fresh vegetables and fruits and things from local growers and local farmers because they aren't part of the big complicated logistical food supply chain that is being extremely stressed. So I do have a higher confidence that fewer people are looking at local food as a real food source, and therefore there's going to be more of that left for me. Endless Blue Skies feels better on a varied diet too. I was thinking about this earlier today. I think one of the problems with dieting and diet culture is that, and I've done this so many times. We read about a diet, we read the results other people get, and we've decided in our minds, before we even try the diet, we've decided that diet works and that diet gets people results if they can stick to it. And because we've decided in our minds that this diet is right and good, and we try it and it doesn't work for us, we tend to blame ourselves and think there's something wrong with us. We tend to think we didn't do it strictly enough, or we need to buy the extra supplements or pills or protein bars or whatever. We don't, as a society, we don't allow for the possibility that it's not the right diet for us. And I think if people went into diets with that open mindset of trying them out as opposed to assuming they're going to work, man, I think the world would be a very different place. A very, very different place. Endless Blue Skies, what happened to me on a vegan diet. So I wasn't vegan, I was vegetarian. And when I was vegetarian, even after like a couple months of being vegetarian, I was just constantly craving meat. I couldn't stop thinking about meat. I always wanted to eat meat. And before I just thought that was me being weak or whatever. But now I see that as my body actually craving nutrients that we get from meat that it's very hard to get from vegetarian sources. Let's see. Raf feels nothing after eating dairy. So here's the thing, Raf. A lot of people are anti-dairy because a lot of people do feel very terrible when they eat it, and they just don't realize how terrible they feel until they stop eating it. One problem with dairy that people aren't even aware of is that modern conventional dairy tends to be very high in estrogen and other hormones because conventional dairy comes from cows who are still pregnant. So if you think about this, like if you think about history and all of life on the planet until we started producing industrial dairy farms, a mother's milk only comes out of her really after a baby is born. When she's no longer pregnant is when she's producing milk, okay? And that's when it's meant to be ingested when the woman's no longer pregnant. So in conventional dairy farming, they are just constantly getting these cows pregnant to have more cows to grow their dairy farm herds. And, the first time they get pregnant is the first time they begin producing milk, and then they just keep milking that cow to get them to keep producing milk. But if their milk flow starts to reduce after time, which it's likely to do, they'll just get that cow pregnant again. And then the entire time that cow's pregnant, they're still just milking it. And all of those pregnancy hormones end up in the milk, end up in our bodies. And it's kind of like taking a really low grade birth control pill every day, getting all that estrogen in our bodies. It's really not healthy. And I think for some people, when they're no longer consuming that estrogen, along with the other problematic areas of dairy, I think people can see a difference. Although I eat dairy, it doesn't cause me problems either. Yeah, if you have nothing but peanut butter, I think that's going to make anybody sick. Oh, Ralph, I'm so sorry you were reduced to just eating peanut butter. Oh yeah, you did that too, Ralph. You did what was healthy on paper, but not what worked for you. Yeah. Yeah, we all need to believe in our body's messages a little more deeply. Our body is way wiser than we give it credit for. People whose favorite food is steak should not be vegetarian. That sounds wrong. Well, yeah, that was the idea though. Like back when I was in my early 20s, I was still in college, you know, oh, vegetarianism is good. Oh, I want to eat good. I want to be healthy. I'll be vegetarian. Doesn't work for me. Doesn't work for me. And I have no interest in making it work. Yeah. All right, guys. So it's been a little over an hour. I do have more work to get done today. Me and Darius say ciao, and it's been great. And I hope you guys come back next Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern as normal. Oh, Raf tried a high-fat diet without grains, but with carbs, and felt great. Then you read stuff and concluded you should eat a flexitarian, close to vegan and low fat, even though it destroyed something. Even though it destroyed his health. Oh no, but you kept believing low fat was good for you, for your Lyme infection. Oh, I mean, that's when you're already ill like that. Oh my God. Having your diet make you even more ill is just, it's crushing. Like things like that, I want to call them tragic because you're already seeking so many answers, and whoever made you believe that, they just made things a lot freaking harder on you. And I know it's all lessons. It's all lessons learned. We're all stronger and wiser for having gone through these things. I've been there too. I totally get it. But man, now he tries for high fat again, but it's hard to eat 2 warm meals with limited energy. It's true. Yeah, you tried the diet a few weeks in 2013 and 2018 and don't get why you didn't double down on that. Yep, with the diet and high fat. Yeah. Because so many people have been telling you high fat's bad. And like, there's no one diet that's just bad for everybody except a high sugar diet. I think everybody agrees that a high sugar diet's unhealthy and a low vegetable diet's unhealthy. Everything else is up to personal experience. All right. YouTube, endless blue skies. Bye, guys. Sending you love and health as always. I'll see you next week. Okay. Bye.